Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, still here in beautiful, sunny, scalding hot. I mean, it is ridiculously hot now. Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm hanging out at the Wynn Resort, Hotel, Casino, and Spa. Do not forget the spa. And I'm here with my friend and yours, a favorite guest on this and every other poker podcast, the homeless poker player himself, Carlos Welch. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
So you told me before we recorded, as we record this on July 11th, you are planning to say goodbye to Vegas for a while, starting tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, so I'll be leaving town tomorrow morning, headed towards San Diego. And then from there, I don't know where I'm going to go next, but yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, and what kind of affordable housing have you been able to obtain in San Diego that makes you want to go there?
Well, there's Mike Snyderman, a good friend of the show, good friend of mine. You know, that's a nice place to crash. Also, I have an ex who lives in San Diego, so that's also a nice place to crash. And then also, if I'm staying in a van, it's much nicer to park it next to the ocean than like next to some drainage, some Vegas gutter somewhere. So yeah, there's a lot of good options in San Diego. Obviously, the weather's going to be perfect.
Yeah, I've never understood homeless people who live in Canada. Just start walking, man. Get to San Diego at some point.
Yeah, it's perfect weather.
Yeah, California is very homeless friendly, but they also have more homeless people there than in any other state. So I guess it's a double-edged sword. The word is out that it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Well, you're not like homeless in that traditional sense.
No, not yet.
You're more by choice. You said not yet.
Yeah,
I guess it hasn't been such a good summer.
Couple more summers like this, and yeah.
So what did you play? What was your approach? What kind of bankroll did you have? Just tell me about your summer kind of in general.
So I played about 10K in buy-ins, mostly 550 tournaments here at the Wynn, 100K guarantees. I'll say that made up maybe like 80% of my package. And then the rest were either survivors or satellites. And for people who don't know, survivors are basically like cash satellites.
Right, so it's a satellite format where everyone who cashes gets the same prize, but where typically in a satellite, the prize is a seat to a bigger buy-in event. In a survivor tournament, it's the exact same format, except at the end you get a cash prize instead of a tournament seat.
Right, and the satellites that I play here at the WSOP actually award Lammers tournament buy-in chips that you can sell for cash. So in a sense, they're all survivors to me because I would never play into I would never use them to play in the bracelet events.
So you did not engage in any bracelet events, even the low buy-ins this summer?
The only bracelet event, I played the online $400 online event and also the 1500 shootout. Now the 1500 shootout just kind of came up at the last minute. There was a guy who, it wasn't a part of my package, but a friend thought that it was a pretty good format for my single table satellite skills. And he basically just put me into that. Didn't go well, but that and the $400 online bracelet event were the only bracelet events that I played.
So you are known for changing your name on Twitter all the time. I mean, you're always at Hip Hop 101 Trivia,
yes.
Right? But the name that is attached to that Twitter handle seems to change based on what's going on with you. So tell the people what your name is right now.
So the current name, I'll tell you, a month ago, or I guess more like month and a half ago now, it was Carlos Vegas. because that's what I changed it to on my way into town.
Yeah.
And then after being here for 45 days and playing live poker, I've changed it to Carlos Live, as in I hate live poker with a passion.
That's good. Very clever. Very clever. Now, you mentioned a package. So when you sell a package, for those who don't know, that means that Carlos gives other people an opportunity to invest in him as a player. So you might buy 5% of the package or whatever it is. And then in the event that he should win, you will get to share in 5% of the profits for whatever price he set 5% at. Now, when you put out a package, was there $10,000 worth of buy-ins listed, and were they specific, or do you just say, look, I'm going to play about 10,000 kind of depending on how I feel? How do you set up your package for your investors?
Well, it was actually around 9K before markup, and then 10K once the markup's added in. But yeah, I put a schedule together, but I also gave myself flexibility to kind of change it to similar buy-ins if I decide to skip a day. Or there was the one recently, I was going to play an 1100 mega satellite at the Rio for the WSOP, but because the third day one for the main event was so big, they canceled it. So I basically just used that buy-in to go over to Planet Hollywood to play an 1100 Survivor. So I keep that. I do set a schedule, but I keep that flexibility for, like, you know, if I have to call in the audible at the last minute.
I think that's important because, you know, there are definitely some days when I think I know what I'm going to play, and then, you know, that night I don't get that much sleep, or I just wake up not in the mood to play. And I would hate for there to be like 12 or 13 guys out there like counting on me to definitely play on that day. And that's not good for them either, because then if I feel pressured to play on a day when I'm not feeling it, that, you know, I'm basically dead money on those days. If I'm about to bring my C game against some of the best players in the world, then we're drawing dead.
That was a big thing. I can't remember if it was this last year where you had the deep run in the main, or the previous time. I remember you talking about one of the days you came in and you were not feeling your best.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that was last year. Yeah. I remember there was just a day when I got like 4 hours sleep, and I just, you know, I did not feel my best, and I really had to grind, and like I took way longer than usual to make all my decisions. I mean, I'm known for like being the player that doesn't have to tank very often, you know. That on that day, especially with as much as we had riding on it, that might have been the day I busted out. Actually, it was just, you know, the end of a really long summer and the end of a really long tournament, and it caught up to me. Not that I was, you know, I don't feel like I, you know, completely lost control and like donked off my stack or anything, but I definitely I had some days last year in the main event when I was, you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to, you know, sometimes your brain is just more focused.
Yes.
And that's the best way to describe it, right? Like some days you have your focus and you know that you're about to bring your A game, and then other days you got to fight just to bring your B game.
Yeah, some days it feels like you're going to you know, do something for fun, and other days you feel like you're dragging ass into work.
Yeah.
And so it's good, like you said, to have a schedule flexibility where, you know, if you don't feel like playing that day, you don't have to. But of course, you can't do that in the main.
Well, I spoke to Jack Effel and I said, you know, Jack, I'm not really in the mood today. You know, can we just reschedule this for like next week or something? And he said, I would, Clayton, but the ESPN people want to do it today. So they've already got the cameras set up. So
that would be a nice luxury for sure.
Yeah, when you buy into a 10-day tournament, you need to be ready to play for 10 days. And, you know, but I mean, I'll talk about it too, but what do you do if you're in that situation and you're playing anyway? Like, we've all been in spots where, for whatever reason, we are playing when we're kind of fighting against ourselves. What are kind of some of your tricks or just words of advice for those who find themselves in the spot that I was in last year?
So this happens to me often because, like I said, I loathe live poker. So sometimes I'll do it because, you know, it's just like too much value to pass up. And so I really like online poker. And so one trick that I've learned is that if I just don't look at people's faces, in my mind, I can kind of pretend like I'm playing online.
Oh, I like that. I've never tried that.
So at the table, a lot of times I'm just looking at hands, like not cards, like physical hands of humans as opposed
Fingers
to
and
their
thumbs.
Yeah. So I just kind of like glance around the table at the hands, the chips, and anything. And I got like music in, or if not music, just like something, a podcast or something to kind of like just to take my mind from the fact that I'm live playing in a casino, and that helps me get through the days where I don't want to be there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I never tried that because I feel like a big part of my edge in the live game is my ability to read my opponents, and taking such an important knife out of my bag would be very negative EV for me. Do you ever get tells by looking at people's fingers?
Yeah, it's like sometimes they have salad dressing on them from eating salad with their hands, which is another reason I don't like live poker, because of all the shenanigans.
You've actually seen...
Oh, there's a video. I don't know. Maybe you haven't seen it.
I don't know if I've seen that.
There's a classic video of a guy that's like, playing at the Venetian and just eating salad with his hands and like shuffling chips.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is not a germophobic man.
No. And Sheldon's big on protecting, us from online poker. Meanwhile, there's a pandemic waiting to happen at his casino. So yeah, there's you don't get as many tells for sure when you're
not looking at your opponent.
Right. Not looking at your opponents. You kind of miss some of the information, but I think if it's a trade-off. So if you feel like trying to take in everything and it's an information overload on a day where you're not playing your A game anyway, you kind of got to use whatever crutch gets you through the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think players in other sports do the same thing. Like you hear about a baseball player, he's got a cut on his finger, but he goes out and pitches anyway. Yeah. In any other sport, there's some kind of equivalent to that. And, to the extent that poker players are athletes participating in a sport, I think that we have to learn how to play when we don't have our very best, feeling or our best vibes or whatever. Now, one of my tricks is I know that I shouldn't be at the table when within the first 5 minutes of sitting down, somebody annoys me. Yeah. Like he'll flirt with the dealer, and that'll normally wouldn't bother me, but then I'm like, why is he flirting with the dealer? Like if I have some kind of like annoyed thought in my head, I use that as like a reminder to myself, like, okay, Clayton, this is a sign that you might not be in the best headspace right now to play this, and therefore you need to bluff less than usual. I make certain adjustments to my game, like try to put myself in a better position to kind of overcome. Because, bluffing is a skill that requires an emotionless kind of disregard for the results. And if I already hate the guy next to me, I'm not going to be emotionless.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which brings me to another topic I wanted to bring up, Carlos, because it gets to the point of playing with emotions, playing poker while you have emotions kind of taking over your body. I sent you a very... interesting text message. Interesting is not the right word. A somewhat salacious seeming text message. Tell people what the text said.
Yeah. So the night before, Clayton and I were on the rail watching our friend Andrew Brokers go deep in the main event, and Clayton brings up the idea of doing a podcast before I leave for the summer. So he takes my number, sends me a text, and that was basically how, we exchanged numbers in our phones. But, and we're on the rail. We're not really focusing on, we're basically focusing on the action. So he doesn't save my name.
I did not save Carlos. And at the same time, I also had plans to play later in a single table satellite, which go on until the end of the World Series of Poker. Even though the main event's already, done or almost done, you can't buy into it anymore. You could still play satellites, pretty much 24 hours a day right now. So I had plans to do that. So let me fast forward and give them a little background. I met a friend someone that I had met a few times before. I didn't expect her to be in the single table satellite when I bought into it, but because she's someone that a lot of people might know, and she was also hanging out with two other known, some might even say celebrity poker players. So they all came and joined the table together, and we all had a jovial atmosphere. And at some point, she asked for my number because she was going to hook me up with some people that she knows in New York, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, I got this female poker player's phone number on the same night that I got yours. And I made a mistake of
didn't save names
didn't save
either.
either one.
Okay.
So then the next day you get a text from me.
Yes. So the next day I get a text from Clayton that says, "Hey, are you still mad at me?" Including this female's this female's name. And so I immediately, I actually thought about it. I was like, should I
let's see where this goes?
Yeah, let's see where this goes. Clayton's a nice guy. So I was like, I'm going to stop you right now before this goes bad.
I give you so much credit for that, because if you texted me thinking that you were texting a female that you had spent time with the night before.
Yes, and saying, are you still mad at me?
I would definitely probably want to have some more fun with that before I let you off the hook and let you know it was Clayton. So I commend you, Carlos, on being a good. He said, let me stop you right there. This is Carlos, and I don't want to hear whatever this is about.
Yes, the next line could be career ending.
So as it turns out, it wasn't quite as titillating as Carlos might have expected. But let me finish the story now. So I'm at that single table tournament, and it gets down to this female player, one of the famous players that she was hanging out with that night, myself, and another player that I've spent a lot of time with in the satellite room, but that they didn't know. And he was a really nice guy. I think he's from the Dominican Republic. A lot of times he and I do like a heads up lasts longer. It's always very friendly. Yeah. Like, I have respect for this player. Older gentleman. He's just there. He like pretty much grinds satellites. He's just there in that satellite room, as a lot of players are. I'm sure he played a few bracelet events, but most of the time that I saw him, it was in that room. So when it gets down to 4 players and this gentleman wins a pot, the female player said something like, "Oh, I don't like where this is going. The wrong player is winning." And she's kind of looking at me and the other player that she knew that was still in the tournament, kind of giving us a sign that she wants it to end up with the 3 of us at the end, presumably so that we could chop up the prize money. So let me stop here. And what would you do, and how do you feel about this type of conversation in a satellite tournament?
I don't agree with it. I think luckily, pretty much everyone that knows me knows that I'm pretty hardcore when it comes to playing poker. Like, I've played with friends at the table. Killingbird has played. Like, it was funny. Like, we had a story where once we came to the Wynn together to play a tournament, and we chatted the whole way here, and then we were sat at the same table, and immediately I shut down. I didn't talk to him at all at the table. Didn't really look at him. Didn't smile. Played an online tournament at Mike Snyderman's house, and sitting on his couch, like 2 feet away from him, and just like 3-bet bluffing him left and right.
So you guys were in the same house playing against each other in the same tournament?
Yes, online at his house. And I'm still gonna 3-bet you if you open the button. I'm in a small blind. You know? So I'm gonna play my game regardless if I'm friends with the people I'm playing with or not, and especially in a satellite where the ethics starts to get murky when you have those type of conversations when there's 2 or 3 friends at the table and then another kind of an outlier, and you're kind of talking about making a deal with your friends, but you wouldn't make that same deal with this guy. Obviously, there's going to be some skill differences there that come into account, but to me, it's just something that you have to be careful about.
Yeah, well, I think you couldn't have said it better. My policy is much the same as yours. This sit and go could come down to you, me, and my grandmother, and I'm going to still try to win it.
Yes.
I mean, if I'm willing to make a deal with you, I have to be willing to make a deal with her and with whoever else might be at that table. And the truth is, when I'm playing single table satellites, like, it's really not worth it to me unless I win them. I'm not trying to sound like a baller or something, but like the prize pool in this tournament was $2,600. You know, I didn't play for 3 hours to try to win $1,200. You know what I mean? $1,300. So I always try to win them. If somebody has a skill edge over me and wants to give me a fair chop, I will take it. I'm shocked at how often players who are clearly better at poker than I am will actually offer me that chop heads up when it's clear to me I'm an underdog to beat them heads up, because most players are so programmed to avoid variance at all costs that they actually don't accept variance when it's part of their equity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm not like that. If I think I can beat you heads up and we're about the same in chips, I say, let's go. Let's play. And I don't care the blinds are really high and it's basically a crapshoot, because I still think that there are mistakes you might make that I wouldn't. And so, you know, because the blinds are so big, those mistakes are big. And I've gotten second in so many single table tournaments, and it doesn't make me go home and cry. You know, it's like they are winner take all. So even though most of them end up getting chopped somehow, it's not required.
Right. Definitely not required.
Right. Now, I know this woman. I've met her at a few different events. You know, she's obviously involved in the poker community. She's friends with a lot of the big time players. So I have had contact with her before, but not enough to like where she was in my phone.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah.
You know, so she's not like in my circle of friends or whatever. She's like someone that I'm friendly with and that I know through other people, basically. So I was a little bit shocked, actually, that she would try to propose a chop or let's team up against this guy so that we can all chop.
Yeah.
I just don't think that that's appropriate. And I told her when she first said that, I said, you know, poker is not a team sport. Yeah. And I said that out loud so that everyone at the table could hear me.
Yeah.
So I made that very clear. Mm-hmm. The famous player busts out, and now it's just this woman, myself, and this older Dominican gentleman that I mentioned. And she again starts saying, I just wanted to get it down to the two of us. Let me say this. This woman is attractive. And I don't think that she's heard the word no a lot in her life. Yeah. So, and by the way, you guys, if you text me or direct message me and try to find out who I'm talking about, I promise I will never, ever tell you. So please don't waste your time and mine trying to get the dirt. I'm not talking about this for gossip reasons. I mean, we're talking about it because it was a funny mistake that I sent Carlos the text intended for her. But also I think it brings up kind of a moral issue. And earlier this summer when I started to play in the single tables, I heard whispers about how a lot of the players that were in there were playing as teams.
Yeah. And
they were doing this kind of blatantly, from what I understand, especially in the higher buy-ins. And so for that reason, I didn't play any 1K sit and goes this summer because I just didn't want to be up against a team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I have heard rumors in the past about certain well-known players colluding in these. Obviously, that's, you know, against the rules and it shouldn't be done. And yeah, it's kind of weird that they're blatant enough to like say it out loud, because she's saying this loud enough that this other guy can hear it, right?
And he can speak English. I mean,
right.
he's Dominican, but he knows that what she's saying. And I was getting increasingly uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's not good, people. That's not good at all.
And not to mention, I have a heads up last longer with him in this tournament as well. Yeah. It was like $200. Yeah, just, you know, heads up, whichever one of us finishes later wins the $200 from the other. So that makes it even more wrong for her to like, now he's playing against two opponents, and that's not good for the game. This guy's not a recreational player, but suppose that he had been, like, if it's his first time ever playing in a single table and this is his experience, like, you go in and all the pros are ganging up on the amateurs.
Yeah. That's so bad. That's so bad. A bad impression for, if, like you said, if this guy was a recreational player, or even if he's not, like, this guy didn't sign up for this experience. Even if he's a pro.
It's really not fair.
Yeah.
So, you know,
should have spoken up.
Yeah. He should have spoken up, but he's just not the type. He's a very soft-spoken guy. And I think that he was pretty satisfied with what I was saying.
Yeah, good. Good.
Yeah.
And kudos for you to take the reins in that spot, because not everybody would be on the up and up in a situation like this, where clearly, if you have a heads up last longer with this guy, her mistake of playing in this manner benefits you.
Of course, yeah. It's negative EV actually for me to do the right thing.
yes. So kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you. I just I don't feel right about it. I wasn't raised that way. Yeah. When we played around my kitchen table with my mom and my brothers, my whole life, there was never any kind of cheating or colluding or anything like that. And maybe because I was used to playing with families, like if I wouldn't cheat with my family, I'm sure as heck not going to cheat with you when I don't even know your name. Like I had to ask her, I've met you a few times, can you remind me what your name is?
Right.
She was surprised by that too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I end up busting my Dominican friend, and I end up heads up with this woman, and she immediately starts talking, okay, now we're going to chop it, right? We're going to chop it. In the meantime, there's 2,600 in the prize pool. I have like almost all the chips. I have like something like 80% of the chips. And she offered me $700. Like she would take 700 and I would take 19. And I thought about it and I said, I think a fair equity chop would have been a little closer to 600 for her. Yeah. But I did not want to chop because I generally don't like to chop in these things. But I did offer her a deal that would make it worth my while to chop. And I asked her if she would take 500 and I would take 21, then we'll just call it.
Right.
I said, but otherwise, I'd rather just play it out. No hard feelings, but I'd rather play it out. I always finish these. Like, I hardly ever chop them.
Right.
So she said, well, a fair deal would be 700. And I didn't want to quibble about whether it was closer to 600 or 700. Yeah. I said, well, that might be true. I knew it wasn't. I said, that might be true, but I don't want to chop. So if you want to chop, I'm offering you 500.
Right.
So at that point, she turns to one of the professional celebrity players that she walked in with, and his advice to her was, look, if you want to take the 500, take the 500.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like, you're not going to win this argument with Clayton because Clayton's not like, I'm kind of impervious to her charms, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like everybody, this is not your first rodeo. And it sounds like this guy realizes that, and that, the jig is up. And take the deal or play. It's not. God, it's so awkward, man, when people do this to you.
Yeah, because it's a lot of pressure. Like, I felt like, and especially because, when she sat down, we were all so friendly and we were all laughing. And it was like, oh, you remember when we were at that party together? Like, this kind of stuff. So now it's like, it's getting weird.
Yeah, this is why I'm not friendly at the table. Because people kind of they feel like you betrayed them when you basically just met them like 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, but even if it were someone I knew well, like you.
Right.
I mean, if I don't want to chop and you wanted to chop, you can't get mad at me because I don't have to chop.
It's a part of the game.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's called a winner take all. Like, there's a difference. Like, we, kind of mix these words together. But there's a difference between a single table satellite and a sit and go.
That's right.
A sit and go has a payout structure, usually first, second, and third.
First, second, and third.
Like, this is not that. So if someone does not chop, you cannot peer pressure them into it.
In the meantime, she won the table last longer.
Yeah.
So she already had something from this tournament.
Okay, lady.
Yeah.
Take the money.
And now I don't mean to be bashing her. I feel like her maybe experience level in poker is maybe a little bit more limited.
Yeah.
And she's not used to people not going along with what she wants for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, like the way she was treating me as though I was suddenly her mortal enemy, it just kind of made me think, like, this is emotions. Now, what chances does she even have of beating me at that point?
Yeah.
When now she's caught all these feelings about it.
It's like, Now it's $450. So the longer she takes to accept this deal, the price is going down.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, I think a fair deal was probably like $625. I didn't do the math, but just in my head, it was around $625. She wanted $7. I offered her $5.
Right.
I mean, a fair price would have been $625, but I did not want to give her a fair price because, as usual, I wanted to play it out. And anyone that spent any time with me in the satellite room knows that when you're at my table, if I'm the one you're heads up with, we're probably going to play heads up.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you really make it worth my while, or I perceive you as being better than I am.
Right.
Which, to be fair, in the $275 buy-in tournaments, I don't really perceive that many players better than I am.
Right.
Some of them are maybe about the same, but like for you to have a big enough skill edge that I'm going to start shopping with you, like that's more like the 575s, the 10, the 1Ks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, that story kind of brings up how there are no friends at the poker table. No. We can be friendly. I don't think you need to shut down and not talk to your friends just because you're sitting with them. But if that helps you stay objective and not have feelings about it, then I don't blame you for that.
Yeah, for me, it's a matter of I enjoy the analytical side of poker more so than the social side at the table. Like people like to ask you where you're from, what you do for a living. I'm willing to engage in those type of conversations away from the table when I'm not trying to formulate your, VPIP percentage in my mind. I can't do both at the same time.
Well, it's left brain and right brain, isn't it?
Right.
So your math side is working on one half of your brain, and then your social, loving, give everybody a hug and a kiss side is on your right side of your brain. And most men, in particular, cannot use both sides of their brain simultaneously. It's been proven that women are actually chemically predisposed to being able to do both better, which might be why you get these chatty women at the table that are also killing you.
Yeah. I know I'm not capable of that. And so this is why, I don't talk to my actual friends, and I'm not really trying to meet new friends because I'm like, there's numbers running around in my head, and I'm not smart enough to do both. And so
that's kind of sad, though. I mean, I'll be honest, that's kind of sad because a lot of the people that you've come into contact with at the poker table have missed out on meeting a really interesting person, and the reason why is because you don't have the capabilities to kind of beat yourself while you're playing poker.
And that's why I love talking about this on podcasts, because the people who are actually real fans or friends of mine will listen to this, and they'll know the next time that we play together, just talk to them on the break. That's the problem that I run into. I don't know a way to say this to a stranger at the table without coming off as and so revealing the fact that I'm actually trying to win this thing. Right. I'm not just here to have fun with my buddies. I'm like, in my mind, I'm seeing a HUD, and I'm populating the HUD that I have on. I'm color coding people.
Right.
In my mind, I'm doing all this stuff.
So you try to turn the live game into the online game.
Hence, looking at the hands as opposed to the faces.
Interesting.
I'm doing everything I can to I'm putting myself in my comfort zone, which is online poker. And so I'm blocking out the live elements that might be interesting to me in any other situation. But in this one, I'm here to try to win money, and I'm focusing on that objective more so than hey, what's your favorite football team?
Right. Well, you would have loved my table that I had on day 2 of the main event. We had a guy at my table that really looked just like an avatar. He looked like one of the avatars on WSOP.com. Yeah. He had the sweatshirt and the sunglasses and the hoodie, and he had a frowny face. Yeah. And I couldn't look at him with a straight face because he reminded me of someone I'd seen on the computer screen.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, to finish that story, I ended up winning that single table satellite, and she basically doesn't want to be my friend anymore. So, I mean, I guess that's for the best. Or maybe after a few days, she'll realize that it wasn't personal. It was just poker. But, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. And everybody's kind of at a different part of their journey. Maybe years ago, I would have felt the same way that she did in that situation. But just, living it in the moment now in 2019, especially when I'd already indicated several times that I wasn't part of a team.
Right.
And didn't have any interest in being part of a team. I don't think she should have had any expectation that I would chop with her, but I think that, she's used to getting her way.
Yeah. And she's clearly in the wrong if she continues to press the issue after you said this 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I've already established it when there were 4 players left.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's not cool.
Yeah, she was really pressing the issue. And maybe in her shoes, she's had a bad summer. Maybe she's really stuck. And maybe the buy-in was too much to begin with for her bankroll, and she really needed to at least get a little something out of this table. I've been there before too. The first time I came to Vegas for the summer, I brought $800 for the World Series of Poker.
Damn, that's even less than me. I had at least $2,000 the first year I came.
Yeah, but I ended up winning 2 single tables and playing in 2 bracelet events with my $800 bankroll. I didn't cash in either one that first year, but I got the experience, which was really kind of where I put the line that first time. Right. So when you're coming out here, if you've never been before, and maybe you're still brushing up your poker game, and your goal is to maybe play next year, I think you don't need a huge bankroll to be out here and have a great time. There's a lot of really small buy-ins, and you can always do satellites as well. But your goal shouldn't be to win Player of the Year if you're coming out here for the first time and you only have $800 in your pocket, right? Yeah. Let's be a little realistic.
And if you do, definitely get in touch with Clayton, because you will make a great podcast guest. If you turn $800 into a Player of the Year win.
Well, my Player of the Year is got to be Andrew Brokus, because we just watched him, and spoiler alert, you should stop this podcast right now if you don't know how he did in this year's main event. So I gave them plenty of time. If they're still listening, it's their fault. Andrew busted out. As we're recording this, Andrew busted out late last night at the end of day 5 and finished in 125th place and won something like, what was it, 60?
$59K.
Okay, $59,000, which is a very good score. Carlos, you were a huge part of Andrew's efforts, so tell the people about your role in all of this.
Yeah, we had the entire pit crew there.
You were doing the tires.
Yeah.
Somebody else was changing the gas.
Yeah. So we had the pit crew, and it was a blast. It started actually with his first table was kind of in a spot where it wasn't directly on the rail, and we'd done the same thing the night before. And I want to say we got out of there like 1 or 1:30. So everybody was pretty much tired. So I was like, I'm not even going to come in to the. I feel like it's like going to work. It's like I'm not coming in.
Coming
today.
into work today.
Yeah,
I'm calling sick.
Yeah. I'm not. I was like, I'm too sleepy, and it's like I can't see from this spot anyway. Right. And everything that I would do for him, I could do over the internet anyway.
Right.
So I just went and did like some cyber recon on like the players at his table, so
you can check out their Hendon mob. You can see what else they've cashed in, how many bracelets they have, stuff like that, right?
Yes. So I did a lot of that work away from the table, away from the Rio, and then once he got moved to a new table about 6 p.m., about halfway through the day, it was closer to the rail, and Emily, his girlfriend, let me know that he was closer to the rail. And so I just, I was like, okay, I'm on the way. And I packed up all the gear and I shot over to the Rio. And this is when the fun really started.
Yeah.
Because this is like my thing. I enjoy helping other people navigate through poker tournaments, because all the things that I don't like about live poker, I don't experience them when I'm not at the table.
You're not sitting there.
Yeah. And so one of my favorite things about poker is talking strategy, which you can't do when you're at the table. And so when I'm not at the table, I get to do this, especially with somebody who's in the game. My buddy Breyer called it being a poker caddy. Yeah. So
I haven't heard that. That's great. A poker caddy. Yeah. You should use the 5-iron on this one.
Yeah. It's like being a poker caddy. And I had a great experience this time because I haven't done this in the past. So at the beginning of each day during the main event, they tell you all the players that, are seated at every table. And like I said, by the time Andrew moved to this new table, we're 6 hours into it. So some of those original players busted. So even though I had the lineup that was there before, it wasn't necessarily the same players.
Right.
So I was like, how can I get information on these people if it's not the same people. So what I figured out I could do, like I knew one guy at the table was a familiar face. So I went through the blog updates and found other players that he was in hands with recently. And so that's how I found the new players to the table. So this guy was in a hand with that guy.
So he must have been at that other table.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. And,
wow.
and then once I found his name, then I can hint about him even though he wasn't on the original list.
Original sheet.
And then each time I found a new name, I can now search that person in the blog. So maybe he played with somebody else who's now at the table. And I was able to get information on probably like 70% of the table. And
you should work for the CIA.
Yeah, that was the truth. I died laughing when you sent me that message. Yeah, it kind of felt like that. It was like, recon, man. It was so much fun just being able to.
Did you collect any DNA from any of his opponents?
No DNA. No DNA.
You could get like fibers, hair fibers, fingernails.
You know what? There was at one point Joe Hashim came around with several boxes of pizza for his son, who was also in the tournament, at the table right next to Andrew, and then so he's passing out pizza slices to everybody around. So I probably could have got some DNA off of used pizza crust.
At least a fingerprint.
Yeah. I get the whole family Ancestry.com on everybody in the tournament at this point. Yeah, so
that's taking it to the next level. Well, actually, you mentioned Andrew's girlfriend Emily.
Yes,
and she actually has a lot of great ideas about poker. Now, she doesn't play, I don't think, at all, but maybe if she does, just a little. But she thinks the players should be required to wear name tags at the table. In any other sport, you got names on the jerseys, right? You know who your opponents are.
Yeah.
Why do we have to figure out from the Poker News blog who Andrew's playing against?
Yeah, and it's we always want to say that poker's a sport. Can you imagine going into a boxing match not knowing who you're up against?
He's going to try to beat the heck out of you, and by the way, you don't know who he is.
You show up, you think it's Kevin Hart, and turns out it's Mike Tyson. Yeah, you don't want that. I like the name tag idea.
Yeah, she has a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was fun. I got derailed, not last night, but the night before. I was hanging out with you and Emily and some other Andrew Broca's fans. Now, if anybody doesn't know, Andrew's a TPE coach. Yes. He also has a great new book out called Play Optimal Poker. Is that the right title? I said it right.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah. I'll make sure I get the title right. And you guys should definitely get his book. And if you haven't joined TPE yet, do it now so that you can watch all of his videos. He has one where he talks about using PO Solver to figure out hand ranges from the big blind versus the under the gun razor. And he goes on different board textures, and he goes so deep. Watching those videos, I realized how little I know about No Limit Hold'em.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
But I found out I'm not so good because Andrew is just on another level. And anyone who's coached by him is getting a bargain no matter what he's charging. So with that in mind, let's talk strategy. You said your favorite thing about poker is talking strategy.
Yes.
Do you have a hand that you want to bring on? Maybe something that you played, or maybe even something you watched Andrew play yesterday?
I do have a hand from I mentioned the $400 online bracelet event that I played.
Yeah.
So I do have a hand from that.
He's bringing up now. Carlos has his laptop, and I'm looking at the avatar that reminds me of the player I was playing against.
I've seen 20 guys.
That guy, exactly, he looks like a modern poker player.
And this guy with a beard looks like Andrew.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, he does actually.
Yeah. Okay, so this hand starts with. So we're at the 50-100 level, no antes yet, and pretty deep. I have 17,000, so 170 big blinds. And the hand starts with UTG1 limping.
Okay.
And UTG2, so the first guy limps for 100, and UTG2 raises to 350.
Okay.
And so action folds around to me in the small blind holding king, queen of hearts.
Okay. Now, before you tell me what you did, the way I would analyze this is two players have shown interest in this pot, both of whom are in early position. If you had a shorter stack and you told me that you folded, I wouldn't even say, Carlos, I think that's a really tight fold. I think with this bigger stack, it's a calling or even three betting are both defensible plays. But overall, against two players from early position that are involved in the pot, I don't think King Queen is doing generally that well, unless you have information about your opponents that we didn't get yet.
No, I don't have information other than what we've seen in the hand, and so I will say right away, the first guy is 150 bigs deep, and he limped from early position. So that says a lot right there. So that's all the information I have on him, and that's enough to let me know that I want to play pots with this guy.
Yeah. Now, 3 or 4 years ago, this would be a sign of an absolute fish. 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, in live and online poker, any type of limping from any position in a poker tournament would be considered a sure sign that your opponent has no clue how to play this game. Yes. Because everything we were learning from training sites and books at that time was that limping is bad. Open limping is bad. You should try to get the blinds whenever you can, yada, yada, yada. In the last year or two, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carlos, but I feel like players developing some type of limping strategy has kind of come back into vogue, and it's not necessarily the sure sign that it used to be. Have you noticed that as well?
Yes, and the reason it has come back into vogue is because when you have say like 20 bigs, if you raise like from late position, you're kind of vulnerable to people shoving on you if that's the effective stack size, and so you end up having to not being able to see flops with certain hands that aren't strong enough to raise call. And so the limp now from the higher more thinking players is an adjustment that allows them to not have such a valuable pot for their opponents to like shove and steal when stacks are shorter. So I think that's why it's come back in vogue. But I don't think the good players are doing it from stacks this deep unless it's blind versus blind. For a lot of people, that's becoming like a standard. Their standard play from the small blind is to complete even 150 bigs deep. But no, I don't think any good players, even in this day and age, are limping from those stack sizes in early position.
Right. So, and then of course we've all seen a player limps from early position, hoping that someone raises so that he can put in the a big 3-bet with usually aces or maybe kings.
Yes.
And I've found that some players I've seen this summer in all the 30 some tournaments I've played, I've seen some decent players do this with a big stack and then put in that big 3-bet without aces or kings.
Yeah.
Representing those hands, but maybe having something more like ace-5 suited, ace king, or other hands that don't mind just taking it down because everyone's going to say, uh-oh, now I have to be afraid that he has aces. So it's always a cat and mouse game, but in balance, right? All things considered, this is probably not a good player. We go through all that, but most likely that open limp is a sign, like it was 3 or 4 years ago, that he's bad.
Yes.
It's just not as clear a sign as it used to be, in my opinion.
Right.
All right. Now, this next player who raised it should pretty much have a value range because even if he's attacking that limp, he shouldn't be doing so from third position, right, under the gun +2.
Yes.
So he's probably got a value hand. So how do we think King Queen is doing kind of in general, and how much credence do we put into our stack depth in trying to decide how to play?
I want to say that I agree that the second guy's range should be relatively strong. So I wouldn't necessarily say we are ahead of it. We're probably on par with it, or maybe even slightly behind it. And I think we're in good shape against the limper. And so for those reasons, I think I prefer just calling here. And the other reason is, like you said, the suited connected hands like this benefit a lot from high stack to pot ratios. So I want to say we probably don't have the best hand, but we can like maneuver pretty well post flop and maybe get the best hand to fold, whether we, improve or not. And that's going to be harder to do if we kind of blow the pot up now. And so these suited hands like this, I much prefer to just call within these spots. We don't want to price out the one guy in the hand that we're pretty confident is a weak player and definitely has a weak range. So yeah, I'm pretty much calling here every time.
Yeah, I don't mind calling here, but mostly because we're so deep. I think we kind of need to have a strategy of being somewhat careful when we flop one pair.
Yeah.
We're hoping to flop more like a straight draw, flush draw, combo draw, something good like that we can kind of be a little bit more aggressive with. Because, even if we flop a pair of queens with king, queen, remember Hero has king of hearts, queen of hearts in the small blind here. If we flop just one pair, we really have to worry that the player who raised initially could well have us beat, and yet flopping a queen with this hand, what else do you want? You're liable to lose some chips, and you're also going to be out of position. So that's why I said earlier, I don't mind if you fold if you have a shorter stack, but I think having a bigger stack makes this a pretty clear call.
Yes.
All right, so we do call, and the big blind.
So we call, big blind folds, and the limper calls.
All right, so now we're out of position against two opponents, one of whom limped and called a raise, and the other one raised. Now we're first to act on the flop of king of diamonds, deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs. Hero holding king, queen of hearts, so we have top pair, queen kicker on a board that's paired. So, how to proceed? Do you ever lead here, or is this always like 100% check to the razor situation?
I always check here. I want to say we talked about how the razor has a stronger range than us here. So, I think one mistake that a lot of recreational players will make is leading out with these marginal top pair hands. I guess it's not super marginal here, but it's not the nuts. And so you lead out here and you're kind of vulnerable if the guy decides to like raise and put in a lot of chips. And then also you unnecessarily weaken your checking range if you're leading out in these spots with your good top pairs. So I'm pretty much checking here every time.
Both very good points. And don't gloss over that. The importance of having some strong hands in your checking range is not to be diminished. I mean, that is a really important point, because if my opponent who raised the limper sees me check and just assumes that entitles him to this pot automatically, then that is like the most easily exploitable strategy, and one that you see all the time in events like the Colossus and the $500 Big 50 and some of the small stakes tournaments that they had for bracelets this year. You would see this kind of mistake all the time, where no one would ever check a king here. They have it, so they bet it. And then when they get raised, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
Because I would bluff raise if the small blind let out for a third of the pot, and I had something like ace, jack with the ace of diamonds, I would sometimes raise that bet, because that lead bet there is hardly ever a really big hand. And also on a board of king, deuce, deuce, it's hard to have a really big hand. So I would raise with some bluffs as well as some better value like ace, king, and aces. So there's just no reason to bet this particular flop. I think there are some flops where you could have a donk leading range, but this certainly isn't one of them. King, deuce, deuce with two diamonds when we have the king, queen of hearts. So we check, and the limper.
So we check, the limper checks, and the original raiser bets half pot. So there's 1150 in the middle, and he bets 575.
Okay. So his half pot bet should be with what Andrew likes to call a condensed range. I don't know how polarized he is. It's very unlikely that he has a full house or quads, right? So
Right.
we are only really behind two hands that I can think of. He could have certain ace deuce suited. Okay, that's possible. But a lot of guys would limp behind a limper with those hands, right?
Yes.
So on king deuce deuce, we're losing to ace king and aces and not really much else. So the question becomes, do we want to raise this half pot bet, or is it better to just call? I don't think folding is really in the realm of possibility now.
No, definitely not folding, and I'm never raising here because one thing that we have to keep in mind when we're navigating through a hand is to keep everything consistent. Like we talked about earlier, how we thought this guy had the range advantage and the other guy was the weaker player. And so although we have a pretty strong hand here, we don't necessarily want to raise and strengthen the range of someone who we already have on a strong range anyway, and also price out, the weaker players. So again, this is kind of a fist pump call every time in this spot.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, I don't want to build a huge pot because I said with king queen, I'm concerned that even if I flop a pair of kings or queens, I'm going to be concerned that I'm beat. So I think that's a reason to just call as well. But let me ask you this. Do you have a raising range on this flop at all? Or is it always either a call or a fold?
So I'm going to have some ace deuce suited here. That's probably going to be the only suited hands I have. So because I have some deuces here that I would raise with, I would have some bluffs, and it would be like backdoor flush draws and maybe some of the weaker front door flush draws. Like if I have like the nut flush draws, so like I have the ace high as well. I may not raise that one, but some of the ones like maybe like jack 10 of whatever the flush draw was, I may raise that one because it benefits a little bit more from fold equity.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, if you have a raising range, you got to have some bluffs in that range, and that's the point there. Okay. So we call.
And the original limper surprisingly makes it 27-31. So roughly a pot size bet, I believe.
Well, now this is really interesting because this is the first aggressive action that this player has taken in this hand. He limped in and then just called, which kind of made me rule out aces and kings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The whole point of limping from up front with aces and kings is that if you get action, you can re-raise. It's very unusual to play aces or kings this way. I would say there's probably less than 5% chance of him having one of those two hands. Would you agree with that?
For sure kings because of the blocker situation, but I will still put some aces in people's ranges here, and even like ace-king type hands. I do agree that it's less likely, but let's say if he limps re-raises, he'll lose me with a hand like this pre-flop because I'm giving him way too much. I'm giving that line too much strength, so I don't even know if I want to be in there with a hand like this that benefits from high SPR, and now he's like lowering the SPR for me.
Right.
And so now all of a sudden his range becomes the strongest range in the pot if he does that. Whereas if he kind of like lets me see the flop when he has a hand like aces, and now he does it in this spot, now I'm more willing to more likely to pay off big bets post flop
and make a mistake. Yeah.
Right. So I mean I wouldn't give it as low as 5, but I'll probably say that maybe he still has like aces or ace king in his range here, maybe 20-30% of the time. But you're right. I think the vast majority of the time, people will limp re-raise with those hands.
Especially when there's more than one opponent already involved, because nobody wants to go up against two opponents with their aces. Even though the truth is when you're up against two opponents with aces, you're still a huge favorite.
Yes.
But most people like to try to get heads up with their aces just because the pain factor of losing with them.
Yes, I agree with that.
Which again is getting back to playing with emotion rather than just logic and math.
Right.
Anyway, I wouldn't put too many pocket aces, pocket kings combos into this player's range, which really raises the question: what the heck is he check raising? It's gone check, bet, call, and now he's putting. That shows even more strength that there's two of you showing an interest in this pot, and he still wants to raise it. I mean, the obvious answer is he has a flush draw with something like Queen Jack of Diamonds, a Jack 10 of Diamonds. That might be able to just like semi-bluff take it down, and if not, it's not doing bad against your calling range anyway. If the diamond hits on the turn, he's got a very strong hand, although it's not the nuts. Does he have any deuces in his range? I mean, is he going to limp call pre-flop with something like ace deuce of spades?
I can see that. I can give him ace deuce of spades, ace deuce of whatever the hell the other suit is.
Yeah, hearts, yeah.
Other than that, though, he shouldn't have very many deuces.
Okay, so what are his value hands? What does he have that's...
So those two combos of deuces, if he, plays ace king or kings, ace king or aces like this occasionally, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he would play king queen this way.
No, I don't think he should.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already gone check, bet, call. Check, bet, call has been the action on the flop. So king, queen can't love it.
No. No.
So this is a really weird raise by him. Okay, so now the action is on the original raiser in the hand.
Yes.
And he decides to fold.
Yes.
And it's up to us, and we have a decision whether to call or fold. I don't think you should be raising.
No, I'm not raising.
Yeah.
Here.
I don't know. I think it's pretty close, but I just think we have too good of a bluff catcher. He should have a lot of diamonds. Like, I think the bulk of his range should be diamonds a lot.
Yeah, especially since there's not very many combos of ace king and aces anyway, and we're not giving them all the combos of it.
No, we really can't, because he just played it in such whatever he has. He's played it in a strange way pre-flop and in a surprisingly strange way on the flop. But Carlos, let's think about this for a minute, because if we think this player has mostly diamonds, why don't we keep raising?
I think if he has. I think it's closer than we are. Well, let me think about that. No, it's not that close. When you think about the combos of diamonds that he could have, because the ace of diamonds is not accounted for, I think he has a lot more combos than he normally would. So he can have ace 3, ace 4, ace 5, all the way up to ace queen of diamonds. Obviously, he can't have any king x of diamonds because the king of diamonds on the board. But then once you go beyond that, you kind of start limited. You're limited with some of the combos because, like you mentioned, he could have queen jack, queen 10, but he probably doesn't have queen 3.
Right. Yeah. Not all queens, but he might have all aces, but he doesn't have all queens, and he certainly doesn't have all jacks, all 10s. But, all the connectors, maybe some one-gappers, depending on how loose he plays. We don't have much information about him, but some players might be bad enough to limp in with 9-7 of diamonds.
Yeah.
And then it goes raise call, and it's well, I'm priced in. I might as well go ahead. What the heck? And just see a flop with 9-7 of diamonds. And now there comes king deuce deuce. It's I don't know how else to play a flush draw. I might as well check raise it big, And he does check raise it big. As you mentioned, his raise on the flop is about the size of the pot at that point. So that's not a joke raise.
Yeah. So I agree that the majority of his range is definitely flushes here, and flush draws. So I I still don't want to raise because, like, if he's bad enough to, be doing this with some of the weaker ones, maybe we scare him away. It's like at this point we have, going back to what I've learned in Andrew's Play Optimal Poker book, is we have the bluff catcher range, and this guy has the polarized range, and generally when that's the case, he should be driving the action. He either has those rare combos of ace deuce suited, pocket aces, or ace king that has us beat, or he has a bluff, even a strong bluff like a flush draw. And so when that's the case, we don't want to raise and put in too many chips against the hands that beat us, and we also don't want to raise and scare away the hands that don't beat us, because there's very few, I don't think there's any actually value hands that we beat that he's doing this with. So his range is completely polarized.
Right. He shouldn't have a lot of king jack, king 10, or other hands that we beat. Some players will do this with like a middle pair, like pocket 8s or pocket 7s, to quote, see where I'm at, which I always love when people put in a lot of chips trying to find out where they're at. What about raising to try to get value from those flush draws? Like, what if we made a raise that he can actually use to call? I mean, is that just a crazy pot inflation? Like, how much does he have behind at this point?
So I want to say he started with 150 bigs. So he's got 12K behind, which is 120 bigs.
Okay, so
and there's 7 in the middle. So because of his check raise post flop, this pot has gotten big really quick, and now the SPR is like 1.5 at this point.
Yeah. So actually, it was 5 before you called. Yeah. So if you told me that you got it in on this flop, I would say I'm okay with it. Yeah. But it's only because I feel like his range is so diamond heavy. He should have, like, we only give him 2 combinations of a hand with a deuce in it.
Yeah.
And there's so few value hands that we can't beat. So there's only ace king, which is a strange way to play ace king. Limp and then call. I mean, I guess look, the most important information we have is that a large bet has been made.
Yes.
Right? That is the most important information.
Yes.
Everything else is secondary. Once that big bet goes in, somebody's gotten serious about something, and we need to give that the right amount of weight.
Right.
But that said, if you decided to shove here or just re-raise hoping he calls with diamonds, I'm okay with it. Even though it's a really big pot, because it's so hard to put him on value that we can't beat, and because those combinations are so unlikely and so rare, I think that if we play this hand 1 million times, 900,000 times, he's going to have a flush draw with something like ace 10 of diamonds.
Yeah. So the question is, if we're that solid in our read, then we also have the option of just calling and basically playing perfect against him on later streets.
That's a good point too, because we have such a strong read of what his range is, or at least should be.
Yeah.
You never know, but this play just feels so much like a flush draw to me. We can't really make a mistake against a flush draw on the turn.
Right.
We can check and fold if the diamond hits, and we can check raise all in if he bluffs again, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good case for just calling here. So I'm okay with either. As long as you didn't fold, I'm not mad.
Right. So we do just call.
Great.
And we get a pretty good turn card.
Oh,
which is
Deuce of Hearts.
The Deuce of Hearts. Now, I've heard that, a deuce doesn't change.
You've been talking to Norman, Chad.
Yeah, this is the one time when the offsuit deuce changes a lot.
Yeah, so the board now is king, deuce, deuce, deuce.
And we have king, queen.
Yeah, and our opponent has 12,000 behind. There's already 7,000 in the pot. So here we have that 1.5 SPR on the turn. If we have a bluff catcher, it just got a lot stronger.
Yes.
Now the chances of our opponent have that final deuce of spades would just be like Carlos brought us a bad beat story or something, which is possible.
Yeah. Definitely possible. I'm not above that.
But overall, I would feel pretty darn sweet about my king queen. We still do have to worry a little bit about a very strangely played pocket aces. Otherwise, I think, that rare ace deuce of spades and the extremely unlikely pocket kings.
Right.
There's almost no value that we're losing to.
Right.
So with that said, because we've been bluff catching all along, I think it's a spot to continue bluff catching. If our opponent did check raise everybody on the flop with a flush draw, does he stop just because 3 deuces are out there now? Maybe, but maybe not. And this is the thing about online poker, is that you just kind of have to figure out who's who, or just play against what the field does. I know in his shoes, if I had a flush draw, I wouldn't bet the turn.
Yeah.
Because it's just too likely you get called by a king or by any pair.
Right. But then the other side of that coin is, if you have a flush draw and I bet, do you call the turn? Because now your flush may not even be good if it comes in on the river.
Right, and that's a good point too. I think that I would probably fold my flush draw because now it's just so likely that I'm drawing dead. When Carlos suddenly wakes up, he hasn't made one aggressive action all day,
right.
And all of a sudden he wakes up and bets the deuce on the turn. He's like, okay, Carlos, I guess you have a king, buddy.
Yeah. Literally the only hand I can have at this point. So now both of our hands are face up.
Yeah. So I don't like leading for that reason.
Yeah, so, and I agree. I'll go ahead and check. And like you said, this guy decides to check back.
Okay.
So turn goes check.
Yeah, which there at that point I think I would still probably put him on a lot of flush draws.
Yeah.
Most of which have no value now.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah, so when he checks back, he's probably giving up on the pot a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So check, and the river is a 5 of spades.
Right. So the flush did not get there. We have a final board of king, deuce, 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 5. Hero holding king, queen of hearts. Suit's not relevant. We have a full house, and I think the question now is: now do we lead out, hoping that he somehow hit that 5?
Yeah. It's kind of a weird spot. It's like, I don't know exactly what he has, because we said earlier that we were putting him pretty strongly on a flush draw. And so I'm thinking that he's either, like when he checks back the turn, he's either giving up a lot, or he's, could potentially bluff river check too. But I don't think he has pretty much any hands in his range that will call a bet that we beat.
I agree. If he calls, he's got 4 deuces or pocket aces.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
It's very hard for him to have any kings. Right. I mean, I guess we did say he could have ace king, but I think ace king wants to barrel again on the turn.
Yes,
of course,
for sure.
Hoping that you call him with pocket 9s or something.
Right.
Yeah. So because ace king has a value target, and because ace king didn't bet the turn, I think ace king is now out of our opponent's range.
Well, actually, okay. So, when you said value target, you're thinking 9s. I was just going to point out that this hand is
we chop. Any king chops with ace king. But
I can still have 9s or 10s or something.
Yeah, and I think that you wouldn't have given up on those hands yet.
Right. So I check. The river, and villain decides to bet a little more than half pot.
Okay. So obviously we're not going to fold our full house. Deuce is full of kings. This could easily be a last-ditch effort to try to win this pot with that busted flush draw that we've been putting him on since the beginning of the flop. It could also be a value bet with pocket aces or 4 deuces that just freaking didn't know what to do on the turn, because how often do you have 4 deuces? A lot of guys don't know how to play. We cannot rule out ace deuce. We cannot rule out pocket aces, although I think checking that hand would have been a mistake on the turn. People do make mistakes, and just because we can't rule it out, and because more importantly, I don't see how we can possibly get value from a worse full house than the one we have. I think this is just a check call situation.
And I agree with that. And so I did check call. And luckily, we get a chance to see this villain.
Okay. All right, so it was not even a flush draw. It was a pure bluff with the 10 of spades, 9 of hearts. So the flop was king, deuce, deuce with 2 diamonds. And our opponent, who limped in from second position, under the gun +1, with 10-9 offsuit, and then called a raise that had already been called by the small blind with it, was not ready to give up on this pot at any point. Check raised the flop with no pair, no draw. Checked back on the turn, which we think caps his range to some extent. And then tried for a desperate bluff attempt on the 5 on the river with 10 high. If I somehow managed to get to this river with the 10 high, I don't think I would bluff with it. There are some times, just because you have 10 high doesn't mean you have to bluff. You know you can't win the pot without bluffing. But the question then becomes, can I win the pot by bluffing? Carlos has been pretty adamant about his desire to stay here. When I check raise so big, the pot size check raise on the flop, and Carlos called me, I'm going to say, all right, I tried. And now I'm not going to put in another chip, because clearly Carlos has at least a king. Maybe we did say you could have 9s or 10s, something like that, right? But I mean, most of your range is going to be a king.
Yes.
So your opponent in this hand, whose name we will not reveal, just in case he's listening, is not a good hand reader.
No, not at all.
He was trying to get you to hero fold, I guess, a king, but that's just never happening.
Yeah, people don't fold boats very often. This is something we learned from the 2+2 days called zero theorem. I mean, a Zebo theorem. Now, this guy, my problem is, now this could have been my fault, because if anybody can fold a boat, it's me. And I made the mistake of making my screen name my legal name.
Oh, so he may know
This
exactly
guy may
who
be
you
a
are.
Carlos Welch fan. He's like, I can get this nit off of a boat. And he tried, but it didn't happen this time. Maybe next time.
I think he tried. I don't like his pre-flop play.
No.
I don't really like his flop play, although I think calling would have been a lot worse than raising.
Yeah.
So his options on the flop, it went check, check, bet, call. Then, I mean, I think that putting in that big raise, we did start to wonder, like, is he playing aces in a weird way? Does he have a weird ace king here, or even a deuce? Does he have that deuce? You know, like, we do have to start thinking about what his value range is when he puts in that big check raise. But you still come to the right conclusion when you have a king. Yeah. And then he should have also concluded that you had a king.
Yeah.
Because his raise was so big, it polarizes your calling range, right? Like when you call there, you really have to have something. You're not fooling around with like pocket threes.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is we mentioned like 9s and 10s would, in our shoes, call that check raise on the flop.
I think sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe, his bluff gets us off of those hands sometimes on the flop.
But he has the cards we need. He's got a 10 and a 9.
Right.
So.
He's blocking his bluff targets. And on top of that, if I had those hands and decided to call, the turn is where I would start, thinking about leverage. And, if I call the turn, I might be facing a big river bet. So I may let it go on the turn, but when he checks back the turn, he like loses all of his leverage. So like now, if I'm on the river with 10s and 9s, I'm more likely to call those hands on the river than I am on the turn. So it's weird that he decides not to bluff the turn and then decides to go for a Hail Mary on the river.
Well, this is one of the things about playing against an unknown opponent online. Like your very first read was when he limped in, I thought he was probably not a great player.
Yes.
And you turn out to be right about that, because this is just not a play that a great player would make.
He plays exactly the way his avatar looks. Like the avatar is just like a bust from heads up, but I guarantee you he has tattoos on his fingers.
No offense to any tattooed fingered fans out there, But Carlos has a read on you, and he's been looking at a lot of fingers.
Yeah, looking at the fingers, there's probably some words tattooed.
Right.
Yeah. So
Power.
yeah. Some aggressive word.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh man, well that's an interesting hand. So congrats on winning that pot. Did you end up cashing in that tournament? Do you remember?
Did not.
You did not.
This is one of the multitude of tournaments I did not cash in.
Yeah. Did you deplete the whole $9,000 bankroll this summer?
Almost.
All
So
right.
the one beautiful thing about it is that this was a $400 buy-in, and I mentioned that here at the Win, I played a lot of 550s, and the one tournament I did cash was a bigger buy-in, so that helped.
Oh yeah.
So that was
gives you some breathing room.
Yeah. So I played two Planet Hollywood 1100 Survivors, and the first one I played, we ended up chopping 7-handed. See, this is the beauty of Survivors for me. There was 42 players in the field, and we chopped 7-handed.
Yeah.
So at the time that we chopped, my stack was worth right around 4K. Actually, if we use ICM, it's right around I believe 4K, but if we did like a chip chop, it would be more like 3,500, and I got 4K. And at the moment we chopped, I had 10 bigs, I believe, and I was right under the gun, and this was big blind ante, so I was about to lose a big chunk of the value of my stack.
2 of your 10 bigs.
Yes,
We're about to go in blind.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, these are the kind of spots. Now, a lot of times on this podcast, I talk about how I'm not a big chopper and I don't really care about ICM and stuff like that. If I were in your shoes, I'm sure I would have taken that deal too.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's to your advantage to do it. My thing is I don't just take chops to avoid variance.
Right.
I've learned to embrace variance in a way that most poker players do not.
Right.
But in a spot like that where it's kind of a no-brainer, it's like, do I want to just put in 20% of my stack blind on the next hand, or do I just want to lock this up right now? I think it's a pretty easy decision.
Especially given that this was a survivor, meaning that if you know correct strategy, I'm not going to be able to call very many bets going forward. So let's say that we don't chop there and I'm in the big blind, and even though I'm kind of like one of the shorter stacks are kind of like so there's 7 players left, maybe I'm like in fifth,
right?
If like the button shoves, I can't call with ace king. Probably can't call with 10s.
Yeah, ace king and 10s are normally in a regular tournament situation.
Right.
Obviously a fist pump, I'm
Right.
happy to call. But yeah, because of the fact that there's someone in 6th place and someone in 7th place behind you, you're really handcuffed because it's called a survivor for a reason. You need to survive even if it's just with one chip to get the same prize as everybody else. It's a different strategy, and I think a lot of players make mistakes because they're used to playing more what we call standard tournament.
Right, and because I understand this strategy, I'm not going to make that mistake, but my opponents don't understand this strategy, so they're going to make the mistake of, actually it is a mistake. The guy who would have been on the button was the chip leader, which is really the worst player in a satellite. And the survivor is the chip leader. So this guy has all the chips. He's raising every hand where he already has a seat.
He should be in his hotel room.
Yeah, he should be in his hotel. So he's going to make the mistake of raising too much, and I'm going to make the correct play of folding too much. So my next, when I get into the big blind here, I'm 99% of the time going to lose these chips. I can't defend. And so it was like a no-brainer chop for me at this point. Like, had this chop been proposed when I was on the button, I probably would tried to hold off for 2 or 3 hands and get that chop when I'm right under the under the gun position. So yeah, this chop was.
I think the big blind ante really does change tournament strategy a lot, especially in satellites and survivors. In this format, the fact that you can wait another 5 hands before you have to post, that's pretty huge.
Yeah,
with a couple of shorter stacks below you, that's really big. But still, even though you weren't about to make a bunch of mistakes, I think locking that one up under the gun is the way to go for sure.
Yeah, and then you also lock up the opportunity to leave the Planet Hollywood.
That's always plus EV, getting out of that place.
Yeah, so that's worth like $300 right there.
Oh, well, Carlos, it's always so much fun to talk to you, and especially when in the rare chance that we get to do it in person.
Yes.
So thanks for coming over here. And before we go, why don't you tell people what you're up to and where they can find you? And, feel free to plug whatever you're plugging these days.
You can find me playing on Bovada. You probably won't see me live for a long time.
Loathe Live.
Loathe Live. So you can find me playing on Bovada. If you want to get in touch with me for coaching at all, you can either find me on Twitter at Hip Hop 101 Trivia, or my coaching website, which is mediocrepokercoaching.com. And also, we discussed the single table satellites earlier. Andrew Brokus and I have a premium podcast where we discuss the strategy for beating the single table satellites. And you can find that at nitcast.com.
There you go. So Carlos is all over the internet. Are you also twitching these days? Do you still twitch?
I do. I haven't done it in a while, but I do occasionally go on, but not
Okay.
Not at any
Something
type
had
of,
to give, right? Something had to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, anything that starts to feel like a job is
Yeah.
not for me. Like I kind of float with the wind.
Okay. I like your style, my friend. I like your style. Well, Carlos, for those who don't know, is an actual real-life TPE success story. You can go back and listen to the archives when Carlos was just kind of like, I don't know, I would say like a daily grinder, kind of trying to figure poker out, and was, built his reputation as a nit the old-fashioned way by actually being a nit for many years, where it was just, you would talk about hands on this and other podcasts, and I would say, I cannot believe he folded. And you've certainly gotten much looser and closer to GTO, as it were. And, I know that you give a lot of the credit for your success to our favorite website, Tournament Poker Edge.
Yes, definitely. TPE has taken me from, I want to say 2012. The end of 2012 was when I really started putting in time on the TPE forums, and I was playing $2 tournaments.
Yeah,
back then.
grinding.
$2 tournaments, excited when first place was $13.
Yeah, how excited do you get when you win $13 in an online tournament?
Back then, man, it was
Jump up and down?
Yeah.
Have a party?
and when you lose, you punch a hole in the wall.
It's a $2 hole in the wall.
Yeah. So, to go from that to where I am now has been, one hell of a ride.
Yeah, well, we've been fortunate to take that ride with you. And so thanks again, Carlos. And for Carlos Welch and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you guys so much for listening.
In Texas, please fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no, she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no, she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, if it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa.